And so we want to welcome everyone to creating a targeted and sustainable model for FBA assessment and planning. So glad that everyone could join us and take it away.
Okay. So there's a couple housekeeping items that we just want to cover, and I'm sure if you guys attended Carol's session earlier this morning, you would have already seen this slide, but you guys might have noticed that you're all muted at this point. So if you have a question during our presentation, because you're on mute, the best way to kind of communicate with us is to write that question within the chat box, and Karen, our wonderful facilitator, will respond to you either then or later on in the presentation. For educational and quality control, we are recording this Zoom session, and by participating, you are consenting to being recorded. However, before we share this session with others, we're going to edit and remove any identifying information to protect everyone's privacy. So I'd like to start off by saying good morning, and I wanted to thank you all for joining us today for this presentation on creating a targeted and sustainable model for functional behavior assessment and planning. I want to first start by providing you with just a little bit of information and background regarding this initiative led by Culpeper County Public Schools as part of our ACE, a VCU ACE grant. So within our Culpeper Systems Change Goal, our team really decided that they wanted to look at ways to strengthen the current FBA and BIP process within the division. One of those action steps included in our goal statement with our VCU ACE service improvement plan was to create a division-wide online training platform that was specific to functional behavior assessment and behavioral intervention planning. So moving this professional development content online was really important to the division for a variety of reasons, which we're going to kind of outline later on. But then, you know, we're fast forwarding to the summer of 2020 and the time of COVID-19. And it seems that we really, truly have moved to a virtual world. We are currently kind of restricted in the amount of time that we're able to spend with each other face-to-face. And most of our activities are really restricted when it comes to face-to-face activities. So having an available FBA and BIP training platform online for division staff to access is more important than ever. We also believe that having an online training format is one additional way that we are more likely to see systematic systems change over time with our Culpeper goals. So we're really excited to be able to share this information with you today. And we, again, thank you for joining us. So the learning objectives that we're going to focus on today, we're going to briefly review the state and federal guidelines related to FBA and BIP. We're going to talk about some of those benefits that are related to online learning platforms. We're going to share with you the process that Culpeper County Public Schools took to identify their specific division needs related to functional behavior assessment and behavioral intervention planning. And then we're going to share one beautiful example of Culpeper's how-to video that is included in their virtual training model. And then we're going to wrap things up today by kind of looking at ways that you as division leaders might kind of look at next steps pertaining to your online training platforms or professional development needs. So why are we even talking about FBA and BIP? Why is this even important? So as I'm quite sure that you guys are already aware of, as you are all autism leaders in the state of Virginia, we have legislation at the federal and the state level that is very specific about when an FBA must be conducted. Our Virginia Board of Education also provides guidance to local school divisions that is pretty specific about what needs to happen in terms of the process of functional behavior assessment, and then taking that information and translating it into behavioral intervention plans. Actually, the most recent document that has been published in terms of guidance from our DOE was published in 2015. So with that guidance document, DOE has really given local school divisions the flexibility to kind of individualize their own division processes and training specific to those folks within their localities. Again, using that 2015 guidance document. Additionally, there is some case law regarding behavior and reasonable calculations of the IEP in public school settings. So specifically, I'll remind you guys about the Board of Education versus Raleigh in 1982, as well as the most recent 2017 Endrer F case. So how do these cases really influence how divisions should think about behavior? It's actually really simple. If a student has behavior that makes it difficult for them to access their educational services, the IEP team should address those behaviors in the present level of performance and then also write corresponding goals in their IEP. And those goals would be behaviorally written. But how would a team determine what behavioral goals should be included in the IEP and whether or not those goals are truly matched to the function of the student's behavior? Well, the answer to that question is that they would need to conduct a functional behavior assessment and use that information to create behavioral goals. So as I previously mentioned, in 2015, VDOE released a guidance document that provided some information on how schools should conduct functional behavior assessment and behavioral intervention plans. So the link to that document is actually found below on this slide. So with the current COVID pandemic, this really presents teams with unique challenges regarding FBA and the implementation of individualized behavioral plans. We really suspect that there's going to be students that have behaviors that were probably less problematic in the past and probably could have been ignored, or maybe we could have used some distraction strategies to minimize those behaviors. So I'm thinking about things such as students that engage in maybe some spitting behaviors or some mouthing behaviors, students that are refusing to wash their hands, or even some of those students that really would like to leave the classroom on frequent bases, you know, in order to kind of get out of classroom instruction or maybe to de-escalate in times of need. Or even those students that really have difficulty arriving to class on time. These behaviors, again, we could have probably maybe not paid that much attention to them in the past, but we're going to probably have to address them now. So social distancing in hallways, classrooms, and communal spaces, that's kind of our new norm. Additionally, we may have some potentially smaller class sizes. So all of these components may potentially decrease some behaviors that we've seen in the past that may have been, I guess, maybe attention seeking or maintained by peer mediated positive reinforcement, but they also may increase behaviors that we didn't see in the past as well. So with that being said, the guidelines for best practice in conducting functional behavior assessment that are listed on this slide are not going to change because of COVID-19. However, some of those interventions and strategies that may be currently on behavioral intervention plans or on future behavioral intervention plans may need to be changed or altered. So as educators, we really need to remain flexible, we need to think positively, and we need to think student-driven as we move forward during this time. So we're going to shift a little bit and we're going to talk about some of the benefits of adopting an online or virtual FBA and BIP training model. So we believe that during this time of COVID, school divisions really have a unique opportunity to look closely at their professional development training models and also the professional development needs of their staff. This may be a great time to consider modifying some of those delivery formats that we have been using in the past to meet the goal or to meet the needs of all staff within a school building. So Lauren and I are going to go ahead and we're going to share 5 different reasons that we believe that using a virtual FBA and BIP training model may benefit a school division and also may lead to sustainability within a school division of specific initiatives. Okay, so benefit number 1. We believe that by providing an online training platform to all district staff, we can strengthen teacher and practitioner competencies involved in completing functional behavior assessment and creating behavioral intervention plans. So often one of the largest barriers that we tend to see with division leaders or trainers is that staff really lack the basic skills and knowledge to understand what strategies can be used to manage some of those difficult behaviors. Having a virtual training platform that all staff are exposed to is one way to kind of get everybody on the same page. So let's talk about some of the other benefits that come from using an online training format that is available to all district staff. So one of our favorite benefits is that we believe that having an opportunity to use a division unified training format, by doing this, we're creating a community of inclusion, or at least we have the potential to do so. So all staff have the potential to receive the same training, and training can be developed to highlight the importance of creating those inclusive environments that provide access to all students. So addressing content in this manner may also help to strengthen the philosophy or the mindset that all students are part of the school community, regardless of the disability or the behaviors that they engage in. Having all staff participate in the same online training may improve staff buy-in and fidelity of implementation in conducting FBA, as well as creating and implementing behavioral intervention plans. So an online training platform available for all staff can help to shape the understanding that behavior serves a function, the belief that interventions should be matched to the learner's needs. It can help to encourage the belief that interventions can be implemented by all staff. And we're hoping by having this type of training platform that we will also enhance teacher knowledge and self-confidence. So the second benefit that we're going to talk about is that using an online training format for FBA and behavioral intervention planning can be developed and tailored to division and teacher needs. So in our experience, two of the largest barriers that we encounter in terms of training staff are time and money. So by using an online training platform, staff may be able to access training at a time convenient to them. Active student learning tools and tests that will assess for understanding can actually be embedded within that online training platform to ensure that staff are really acquiring that foundational knowledge. Additionally, using a division created online training format is cost effective. So staff who generally provide face-to-face training and instruction on FBA and BIP now are able to devote some of their time to and attention to other activities within the division, and they don't have to spend time prepping for trainings and delivering those trainings. So how might a division ensure that training is targeted to the needs of their specific division? Well, the first step that we believe of this process is to determine what your division needs in terms of training. So in Culpeper, we did this by looking at a variety of different pieces of data. So first, we administered a division-wide survey for all staff within Culpeper County Schools. So we looked at the information from that data. We also looked at the data that was available to us from our Culpeper Division Special Education Performance Report Card. So we were really interested in those indicators that dealt with LRE, or least restricted environment, suspension and expulsion, as well as placement out of the division. We also administered a pre-assessment kind of survey monkey to kind of get a baseline of knowledge of administrators, of teachers, and staff to kind of know what they knew about evidence-based practices, as well as those proactive strategies that effectively support students in the classroom setting. So this provided us the data that we really needed to have to understand what staff knew, but also what they needed to know more about. And finally, we looked at APERS data. So APERS is the Autism Program Environment Rating Scale. And that data provides a really nice snapshot of what is happening within the classroom, so we kind of know what implementation of practice might look like. So I'd like to pause just for a moment right now to kind of speak more about implementation of practice. So we all know that we can create and we can develop beautiful, comprehensive training packages. We can make them available to all of our staff and all of our teachers. We can skillfully deliver and present that content, and we can test for understanding. We're really good at that. However, if we don't see that those skills and that knowledge transfer to the implementation in the classroom or the school setting, we have not fully trained our staff. our job is still not finished. So we need to look for ways to bridge the gap between knowledge to implementation. And I'm going to say that again. We need to look for ways to bridge the gap between knowledge and implementation. So I'm not really sure what the upcoming school year would look like with COVID-19, and I'm really not sure that anybody really does know at this point. But when we get back into classrooms, we get back into the coaching and the support that we love to provide, I would really encourage everyone to kind of focus on the implementation of those evidence-based practices that are relatively easy to implement. Those evidence-based practices that require lower teacher effort, but also get you the most bang for your buck. So many times making sure that those evidence-based practices related to visual supports, visual cues, visual schedules are implemented consistently and are present in classrooms will kind of do that. That will get us the most bang for the buck. I really want to also say that it's very important to make sure that the training that you offer your division staff is based on what you know that they need. Again, the training is based on what you know they need, and you know it because it's based on the data that you've collected. You want to make sure that the training is not based on what you think they need. So I'm going to hand things off to Lauren right now, and she's going to share with you some of the other benefits to using a virtual training platform.
Thank you so much, Noel. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for being here. Let's jump right into number 3. The next benefit for considering a virtual FBA BIP training module is the establishment of clear division process and procedures. Focusing on intensive supports like an FBA and BIP because previous interventions were unsuccessful can certainly be challenging. And sometimes FBAs and BIPs, they can be rigorous, they can be time intensive, even contentious. And because of this, divisions can eliminate some frustration and anxiety by providing staff with consistent protocols that meet the needs of the students. And especially in the age of accountability, ensuring systematic implementation of behavioral practices is of great importance to schools. So let's take a look on them. Noel, would you mind next slide?
Sorry, Mike, yes, I'm sorry, Lauren.
No problem.
My mouse has now frozen.
The suspense is killing everyone. I can see.
So sorry.
This is all part of the plan.
Okay, there you go.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Noel. So when creating an online division process for FBAs and BIPs, think about streamlining certain behavioral procedures. By streamlining protocols on a virtual platform, we can ensure that all staff have that common language, that common understanding of your division process. So suggestions to do this include creating an FBA or BIP flowchart. And the flowchart could provide explicit directions on the required steps to complete the process effectively. Also, think about providing a clear infrastructure or chain of command when conducting FBAs and BIPs. Oftentimes, without specific guidelines or a defined process, confusion can emerge. And there often is uncertainty of who takes the lead for behavior planning, who is the point person for the interventions, and a consistent chain of command will provide answers to those questions. And then each school and classroom can then complete the FBA and BIP process in a similar and familiar way. Also, think about creating a comprehensive planning sheet for the behavior plan process. And we'll show you some examples in the upcoming slides. And these can be individualized to meet your division and promote uniformity, just like Noel said. And lastly, think about tracking fidelity with tip sheets or implementation checklists things like that. Your online platform, if you choose to go virtual, should be that one-stop shop for everything FBA and BIP. It's in one place from creation to the implementation of the plan. It's the hub for behavioral knowledge. And this probably goes without saying, but as you roll out your online platform, visually organize division processes for better understanding. I always say, when in doubt, use a visual. It works for everyone, from students to staff to family members. And Noel, if you wouldn't mind going back just one more point here, if you already have the visuals, you can edit them and tailor them based on the ever-changing federal, state, and local mandates. Okay, let's take a look at the next slide. So here is an example of a way to visually organize the FBA and BIP process. The visual is color-coded. It uses simple yes or no questions and fits into one page. And our goal is to make the visual supports easy for staff to use and implement. And when in doubt, the visual should be clear and consistent for all staff and readers of all ages. So eliminate those loopholes as much as possible with too much behavioral terminology and words like that. So especially in today's world and with the current pandemic, be aware of contextual factors such as competing demands, ever-changing policies, a significant change in day-to-day responsibilities, and also the presence of collective trauma that we talked about earlier. And these factors alone can affect the extent to which professionals carry out their plans. And as much as possible, we want to provide a clear-cut process that makes steps seamless and manageable to complete. And the advantage of using an online platform for a visual like this is that you can hyperlink resources and videos to each component of the flow chart, and it can be interactive for the user and reader. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Thanks, Noel. So here's an example of a BIP implementation tip sheet. It is also one page and is an overview of the BIP. And this form by no means takes the place of a full extensive behavior intervention plan, but it can be a snapshot for staff. And components to this could include target behavior, replacement behaviors, environmental factors, reductive strategies, reinforcement procedures, just to name a few. And all of these resources can be compiled on your online learning platform. And this is yet another way to streamline the behavior supports and provide that clear division process. I always like to use a video, a really short clip, to walk staff through how to use this form, who to give it to, when to use this instead of a comprehensive BIP. So next step, how do we decrease the number of incomplete FBAs or BIPs? We create a process to promote consistency. Last year, Noel, Gino, and I conducted a review of FBAs and BIPs. And during that audit, we discovered many detailed and thorough FBAs and BIPs, but often essential components of the behavioral process were missing, or they weren't individualized to the specific student. So creating a solid infrastructure of the FBA process is essential. We always talk there are behavioral non-negotiables. And using an online platform, create an interactive checklist for those non-negotiables and tracks those FBA and BIP steps. So the checklist will make sure all of those components of the behavior plan are addressed. It can be done in real time. You can see what steps each staff are on, and it can be on that transparency. It's clear for everyone. And so here's an example of a simple checklist that includes important steps of the FBA and BIP process that could be downloaded to that virtual platform. Okay, number 4. Another benefit to implementing an online learning platform is that resources can be easily accessible. Time is often a huge barrier that impedes staff from utilizing resources. We can construct a beautiful, all-inclusive and clinical FBA BIP training module, but if teachers don't have the time, materials, or space, we're setting ourselves up for failure. We really want to set ourselves up for success, and we can do this by understanding their needs and providing resources that are ready to go and are able to be used quickly. So the benefit of a virtual training module, if you're thinking about doing that with your division, is that it can be viewed at any time. This allows flexibility for staff. Staff can choose when it is the best time for them to access important behavioral information, whether that's at lunch, right after school, whether that's 2 a.m. feeding your babies, they can access that whenever they choose. In addition, staff have the ability to rewatch and review the training modules when needed. They don't have to wait for a once-a-year big in-person training. It's right at their fingertips. And modules can also be referenced as the staff member is completing the behavior plan as well. So for example, Culpepper, and we'll talk about in a little bit, created how-to videos. And these how-to videos are 3 to 5 minutes, and they're videos that broke down the FBA and BIP process into different sections of the specific division forms. And this was done so that staff could watch certain videos when they were completing the FBA and BIP process forms. And teachers can pause when needed or review certain sections if they needed assistance. So along with that flexibility, online resources are cost effective. Noel briefly mentioned this, but the materials can be free to all users and they can be downloadable, they can be printable 24/7. So folders, workbook, binders can be printed or made for the teams, but resources can also be shared to team drives and folders as well. So along with being cost effective, creating online resources can promote opportunities for unique communities of learning. And during the school day, we often stay within our teams for the sake of time and efficiency. And when we're staying firmly in our lanes, we often miss wonderful opportunities to collaborate with other professionals and learn from them. And I love using online resources because professional learning communities, or PLCs, can be created with an array of staff members. So you can have breakout sessions with uncommon pairs that can promote learning, understanding, maybe a shared vision with behavioral interventions. You can also group individuals by need. Teams can group together by school, grade, disability category, or even new staff for onboarding purposes. So everyone coming onto your school division can watch an FBA BIP video and know the expectations of your division. And virtual training can take place regardless of external factors. It is social distancing at its finest. So staff can safely and comfortably watch the content of FBAs and VIPs in their own homes or offices. They can watch or view classrooms from around the world within their 4 walls. So it really opens up the world to them. And for this presentation, we focus mostly on staff training, but virtual platforms can provide resources to families and students as well, especially during this ever-changing time with COVID-19. And with change comes opportunity. And when there is change, there's also an increase in creative use of resources. And to me, teachers and educators are some of the most resourceful and creative individuals on this planet, truly, truly. And whatever capacity you're in a school setting, I just want to thank you for what you do for students, really, especially during this time. Thank you for all your hard work. I know there's many sleepless nights. And so a shift in training platforms can allow staff to creatively train with minimal time. And it's not adding more time, but a shift in how we use time. So thinking about proactivity. So for example, staff could watch a 5-minute how-to video on data collection on their own time, and then have an in-person meeting with a coach to practice. Or staff could learn about preference assessments online and then implement one when they get back into the classroom. Our time in the classroom, especially now, is so precious. So we really want to make that use and use it wisely. Training can become more organized and proactive, and there can be that blend of in-person and virtual training with respect to all parties' times. And the practice of implementation, the implementation piece can still be done at schools, but we've really tried to focus skill building and content knowledge to be done online. Also, there's the opportunity and the ability to share materials between programs instead of only having one behavior kit in like 1 or 2 programs. A behavior kit is located online. Again, it's that one-stop shop. And this will help build staff capacity and create well-informed and knowledgeable team members when dealing with challenging behavior. This will help that key term of building capacity. We want knowledgeable staff. And then there's also the opportunity for teams to have shared planning time or brainstorming time through online Google Chats, virtual training platforms. Face-to-face discussion boards or online discussion boards can be used as well. And the last benefit for considering a virtual training platform is systematic planning. Some teachers and staff may have alliance to traditional practices and may even express discomfort with learning or implementing new interventions or EVPs. And that's why we need to have a systematic planning approach to problem solve behavior holistically and get that buy-in. And this type of planning allows for a well-rounded approach respectfully for behavior training, and you can build on those traditional classroom management practices and used research-based methods as well. So thinking about a comprehensive plan of action, putting behavior plans into place can be difficult. It can be a difficult thing to do. And we need to create a comprehensive plan of action, and this can have many moving parts. And our goal is a systematic implementation. And a training platform can describe reasonable and transparent steps for staff to carry out. So we want to think about the ease of the implementation process by detailing the who, what, when, where, and how of the FBA and BIP. And staff can download resources that can be incorporated into lesson plans. Examples of resources could be fact sheets. We love to do division briefs, or even a list of tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 strategies. And the FBA BIP process requires monitoring and analyzing data. So think about adding a progress monitoring tool or accountability measure to your division process. And this can lead to effective and sustainable behavioral supports and practices. And this is how your virtual platform just grows and grows and really just takes on a life of its own. So next we're going to have, now we've talked about kind of the benefits for considering a virtual platform and using online resources for staff. We're gonna have Mr. Gino Binkert talk about specific examples that we used when we were at Culpeper.
Thank you, Lauren. Hello, everyone. As Lauren said, my name is Gino Binkert. I was a behavior specialist at Culpeper County Schools, and when we undertook like Noel talked about during our systems change goal, we kind of thought about whenever you're changing something district-wide, you have to be really, really in-depth and be willing to change something that you might not like to see. So I'm going to kind of discuss that a little bit because it talks about a journey, kind of how we found some things that were not okay, but we're definitely working on changing that and definitely going for the better and working on teacher knowledge. So when we're talking about systematically changing something, we have to start with our research. And when starting this goal and auditing and changing our FBA and BIP process in Culpeper, we started to do a little bit of research into how could we audit our district-wide plans. But we also wanted to do it in the lens of a teacher, because that's going to be our big target audience. Training is going to be our target audience of teachers, admin, and counselors, and the ones that really write our plans. So we found a dissertation article in 2016 by Mary Cronberry, who highlighted the areas that most teachers understand of an FBA VIP, but it definitely also perpetuated a ton of needs that a lot of teachers might be looking for, and a lot of it focused on training, which is definitely one thing that we wanted to focus on. So when we looked at this goal of auditing, we thought as a team, we kind of needed a uniform process to conduct this, so that way someone off the street could come in and definitely understand our process and do it in terms of replication, and really kind of take lead and go through it as they could. So using similar questions and key foundational pillars of behavior plans, we kind of created a behavior checklist. And in this form, it was really based on your critical needs in an FBA and VIP, but we really also wanted to tailor it to kind of Culpeper County schools. Just as you know, with behavior plans, everything needs to be individualized. So when we took apart this plan and put this thing together, we really wanted to kind of focus in on what we needed as a county in Culpeper. So we broke down our form into 6 categories. And those categories, as you can see, were data collection, which is definitely crucial in FBA VIP. That's your kind of your breadwinner of everything. Your intervention, which is that kind of the Cadillac, I like to call it. That is your driving force behind your whole thing. Reinforcement, which I find that a lot of teachers and a lot of behavior plans miss. And we found that in Culpeper especially. Hypothesis statement, again, a behavioral kind of pillar. Behavioral goal, which is kind of more particular to Culpeper, and instruction, which is definitely another kind of Culpeper tailored goal as well. So in our next kind of process, after we kind of looked at this article and kind of really created this behavior checklist, we need to obtain consent and access to behavior plans written by, again, our target audience for our training platform. So that included our school admins, school psychologists, teachers, guidance counselors, behavior specialists, or anyone that is a part of this FBA and BIP team. So now what I'm going to go through is our kind of example of our form that we used. And as you can see, the first 2 categories, the form is very simple. Yes, no, or maybe answers. And there's also a little section on the side there for a note section. So, and within these categories, there are specific answers that are crucial to any behavior plan. For example, as you can see in data collection, it includes progress monitoring examples and what types of data collection methods are being used during your FBA and BIP process. And as you can see, intervention, it includes brake systems, what visual supports, are there any environmental change? So these are kind of like provides that tailored snapshot for if you have an observer coming in looking at your plans, they can go through, okay, are there environmental change? Yeah, what are they? Boom, boom, write them down. And then we kind of keep going through the process. And again, these are key principles, and it's also even our foundational 5 practices that we really preach with VCU and ACE as well. And also just kind of plain old good behavior practices, period. The next part of the form, as you can see, is categories 3 and 4. Again, crucial categories, reinforcement and hypothesis statement. I kind of want to touch on reinforcement quickly. You might think there should be more questions in this category. Why is there only 3 questions in this big, huge category? You're correct. But when we created this form, we wanted this to be done quickly so that we could identify specific strategies that are in place and specific areas that we needed to target without getting very technical and confusing like our target audience as well. The last part of the form, section 5 and 6, as you can see, really were behavior goal and our instruction. And like I mentioned before, the instruction category is kind of something very specific to the way kind of Culpeper does their FBA and VIPs, and also what they include on their FBA and VIP forms, which is how are you going to teach your intervention, and are you changing any piece of the academic instruction? So again, we wanted to curtail this form to Culpeper specifically and acknowledge some things that we might need to find out. So We are in step 1 of kind of our CCPS steps. We kind of created these steps along the way and kind of jumbled them up, and now we have a clear-cut understanding of how we did things. So when we created this form a couple of years ago, after auditing the behavior plans that we found a lot of interesting data. We found that our tier 3 FBA and BIP plans, we had kind of 2 forms and 2 processes going throughout the district that the teams were able to use to complete. And one kind of process was very narrative based. And it really relied on the creator to put in as much information as possible as they could. And that kind of gets choppy because when you have very narrative based kind of forms and narrative based process, you really lose the science behind behavior. And then the other form that we had, the other process, was very more scientific and behavior based. It was step 1, do this, step 2, do this, step 3, do this, and it had each category listed through it. But now that form and that process kind of needed a little bit of tweaking. So during our process, we collected about 11 FBA and BIP plans, small number for our district, but this is kind of how our data that we found through our auditing process. We found that out of the plans, most of the plans had the 4 main functions: attention, escape, avoidance, access, tangible, automatic, or sensory. But we also found some plans that kind of had a couple of outliers of functions. So you might be thinking to yourself, wait a minute, there's only 4 functions. I'm telling you, we had some plans that had a function called power or a function called control. Again, not recognized in terms of science or in terms of behavior science. And in terms of our interventions, we found that only 54% of our plans that we collected data on, that they matched the intervention with the function. So only half of our plans that we collected data on were hitting the mark. So that means 50% was not hitting the mark. We can't have that in terms of behavior plans because we need to be at close to 100% as if possible. And what we found in terms of our reinforcement for our auditing is that a lot of plans included punishment procedures without knowing it. So for example, we found 3 plans that included response costs as the main intervention. And we also found 4 plans that included punishment procedures. Not the greatest way to handle behavior. So we were kind of looking as Culpeper, oh boy, we have kind of a big problem here. I mean, whenever you're doing a systems change, well, you're going to find problems. It's like whenever you do projects around the house. Oh, I broke that pipe. Oh, got to fix that again. So you're kind of going through this process. You're going to rip Band-Aids that were just kind of put in certain places. So what we needed to do was we need to come with a uniform process of conducting our FBAs and BIPs, and that our teachers and staff need training. That was the biggest key factor that we found during the auditing process, that we need training. Now, we do in-person training all the time, that one time a year, but we need them to have access to it all the time. Because I used to be a teacher in that training. I got the training once, and if I had to be a part of an FBA BIP, I forgot all the information I learned, because if I'm not using that information constantly on a day in and day out basis, I forget it. Everyone does. If we're not fluent, we forget it. So as a team, we created one form district-wide to use. So as you can see, we're kind of in our step 2. We created a very systematic and division-wide form that everyone needs to follow. And in this form, it highlights the functions specifically that are behavioral functions, the 4 functions that I mentioned. We didn't have any area to include other. There's no other section in functions. The form also highlighted an escalation procedure plan that a lot of times we missed in our plan. So when problem behavior occurred, everyone was kind of running around like chickens with their head cut off, to be frank. So everyone didn't know what to do. So this kind of gave them a process of planning for that extreme aggressive behavior. And then in the form also that we created, we wanted to highlight data collection, because a big key part that we found in our plans was that progress monitoring was not happening, and that we weren't using behavioral data collection methods. So really focused it into scatter plot, time sampling, rate, ABC data. We really took out that narrative piece, which we found a lot of times in our behavior plans. So now we're kind of going along in our step 3. So we tackled one goal. We created this awesome form that can be implemented with fidelity across the district. But now we need to kind of tackle that training portion. This is going to be our meat and potatoes of this portion right here. So we created a subcommittee comprised of 3 BCBAs and kind of 2 administrators, and we felt that virtual was the way to go. Even before COVID, we felt virtual was the way to go. It was a way to give individuals access to this training 24/7. So we designed our training platform, again, based off of Culpepper's forms and Culpepper's way of doing things, very individualized. And we wanted to make sure that everything was really intertwined with each other, so that way it wasn't, oh, I got to learn this platform and I got to learn this new procedure. No, we really intertwined it. And the way we did that was the district is going all Google. So we have access to Google Classroom. So everything that we did, when we're talking about resources and use of resources, like Lauren said, it's very cheap the way we did it. All we used is PowerPoint. We used PowerPoint, voiceover recordings, and just we're creating a Google Classroom so that way it can be housed district-wide and it stays there. It's not, oh, you got to do this training and it goes away. No, it's there all the time. So that was a big key way whenever we were creating this platform, is that Google was already something the teachers knew, so we weren't going to change that. So how can we incorporate all this great information into a way for the teachers to understand? So then we created our virtual training plan and then established that plan, which I'm going to kind of show you the examples next. So this is kind of our training platform that we did. Like Lauren talked about, our how-to videos. These are quick, short videos, 2 to 5 minutes in length, that really kind of touch on the needs for each section of the FBA and VIP process in Culpeper. The reason why we kind of made it 2 to 5 minutes and nothing too daunting is, I'm not sure about you, but I know if I'm in a long presentation, it's 4 hours into it, I forgot probably the first 3. I maybe was focused on the first hour. After that, I got nothing. So that's why we wanted to make it this quick little snippet, this 2 to 5 minutes, so that way teachers, 1, do not get bored with the information, and 2, they can rewatch it quickly. So that way they don't have to take a whole maybe lunch break to do it. They can watch this quickly during planning and not lose their whole planning time. So as you can see, we broke down our FBA categories into 17 videos. And this is, again, off our FBA training platform, off our FBA forms that we created. We wanted to do data collection unified across the district and really kind of focusing behaviorally what our teachers wanted to do. Now you may be thinking, how can we shove all this information in 2 to 5 minutes? And as you can see, like the data collection, we really broke that down into 6 categories, because we felt you could not combine all data collection into 2 to 5 minutes. Trust me, we understand that. We're not going to be able to. So as you can see, we designate a video to each type of data collection on how to do it, how to create that in the classroom, and how you can continue to do that for progress monitoring. So next is the BIP training platform. Again, we are focusing on our Culpeper-based forms. We really wanted to focus on those critical elements of behavior. And again, total, we have 13 clips on this one. So total, we're going to have 30 videos and 30 training modules that our staff are going to have access to 24/7. This was kind of our virtual training plan. Again, really quickly, easy to use. And now what I'm going to show you is a little couple examples of our PowerPoint slides that we use for this training plan. So this is just kind of one introduction slide that we had. As you can see, we have Culpeper's logo, the ACE logo. Really simple, nice, and got nice pictures, not too daunting. The next slide we have preference assessment. Again, this is going to be a 2 to 5 minutes, not a slide, but this is going to have a good bit of information. And now I'm going to really show you an example of kind of how we did this with voiceover recording. And you might hear a celebrity come back into play here with Lauren coming back in. You might hear a little voiceover back over. So go ahead to the next slide and listen to this video, what we did.
Noel, I can't hear anything. Can you hear it?
I can hear it, so I'm going to go and stop share and come back. Oh my gosh, I see all these people. Hi, guys. Okay, let's try this again.
If you want to click on the slide previous and then come back, and then you make sure you click that all participants can hear. Okay, great.
One form of indirect data is conducting interviews.
Can you hear it now?
Interviews are completed to investigate behavior and why it is occurring. It is a way to gather detailed information about a student's behavior. In the FBA process, we want to ask about the behavior before we see the behaviors during observations. This is done to give the observer a focus during direct observations. The purpose of the interview process is to identify certain behaviors and focus on when they occur.
So like we talked about in terms of our resources, as you can see, this was easily done on PowerPoint and using the PowerPoint programs and doing a voiceover. We didn't need some big theatrical camera, lights, audio. We didn't need a boom mic or anything like that. A lot of it is just good sound behavioral knowledge that we just train our staff on through PowerPoint. Quick, easy 2 to 5 minute videos. So now what we kind of want to talk about now is kind of how you're going to take this that we've talked, the training platform, all the benefits of it, and how you're going to plan for your division. So kind of our first question is, now what you're going to do is in the chat box, we're going to look for your responses, is where we're going to kind of take this portion. So what is the first step in kind of developing or strengthening your division process? So in the chat box, you're going to go ahead and needs assessment, I see. See what your staff knows. Survey current FBAs and VIPs to see quality. Beautiful, awesome. Reviewing current practices. More one person responsible.
These are great responses.
Yes, awesome.
Nice job, guys.
Awesome, and that's what we looked at too. So a lot of people are talking about kind of that needs assessment. What do we need as a district? So that's one thing that you definitely need to start with is your barriers that are going to cause your FBAs and VIPs not to be very sound behaviorally. You need to identify that, and then you have to come up with a plan of how to address those behaviors, or excuse me, barriers, not behaviors, and how to address those barriers. And like we did, we kind of created our FBA and VIP training. So how will you take the information that we talked about today, and how are you going to give your division and provide training on your FBAs and VIPs? That'll be the next kind of question in the chat box that we're putting up. Small video clips.
A lot of people are writing in the group chat. One thing about focusing on getting the buy-in, so with the video clips, incorporate your teachers, your paraprofessionals, your administrators, even a student. So it's not just one person who is recording that you hear the same voice over and over again. It's that teamwork and collaboration, and you're getting the buy-in from all of your staff.
Awesome. I've seen some great answers as well. Liking the idea of the video clips and Microsoft Teams going really virtual, doing maybe after school meetings. Who doesn't like to see themselves on the big screen? I agree, girl. I do the same thing. I like stuff. Google Meets. Very good. And that's one thing that we wanted to focus on when we created our plan is how can we make it easy for our target audience to access the training platform, that we're not teaching them something brand new. That's why we use the Google Classroom and use the PowerPoints. Most of our staff know Google Classroom. Most of our staff knows Google and PowerPoints. I think we were taught that in high school, how to use our PowerPoints. So everyone is well versed in that very much program. So now what we're going to do, we're going to kind of touch up, and I'm going to pass it back off to Lauren to kind of hit the home run and bring home clear the bases for us here. I'm getting kind of antsy for baseball here. So Lauren, why don't you go ahead and take it away and kind of wrap it up on our final thought.
Okay, so just some final thoughts. I'm aware of the time. I know we've had some questions in the group chat. Please feel free to email us. We're happy to answer or problem solve or work with you. We're here to support you. Just some final thoughts on virtual training. There's opportunity to train staff to think like behavior experts in a variety of training options that can be conducted online. There's also an opportunity to promote a shift in thinking. Instead of thinking, who do I call when behavior happens, staff will be equipped to deal with the behavior when they happen. And there's an opportunity to foster staff confidence by building classroom and behavior management skills. And lastly, there's an opportunity to develop competent and knowledgeable staff. So thank you again for your time. We'll put up our email. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. Thanks again. Noel, Gino, do you have any more final thoughts?
I think for me, I just hope that I get to see you guys all in person next year. I've really missed kind of the collaboration and the face-to-face activities and the socialization that we all have, and just the networking. So again, just to kind of second what Lauren said, if you have any questions whatsoever, please feel free to reach out to us. You know, we're here to support you, and we're more than happy to do so. So thank you guys all, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the summer cola, virtual style.
Would you three be willing to stay on for just a few minutes to field questions if people want to, and then other folks could exit?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
There's a couple. I think you answered about the platform. Several people were curious about what platform, whether it was Blackboard but you shared you were using Google Classrooms and PowerPoint. The question was, was this process for special education teachers only or for all teachers? I mean, can anyone access it, or was it a closed group?
Yeah. So what we really wanted to focus on is kind of that target audience. So the target audience is anyone that creates FBAs or VIPs in our county. So admin, school psychs, it's just really teaching that behavioral background knowledge to everyone that does anyone or anything with an FBA and VIP.
Thank you, Gina. And that kind of gets to the next question, which who does everyone in your division do FBA BIPs? Do teachers do them, or is it specialized staff?
Some teachers do them, but most of the time it's a specialized staff. So guidance counselors, school admin really focus on our general ed students that might require an FBA VIP. In our special education world, most likely it's going to be either a behavior specialist, school psychologist are the big focus on the individuals that complete those. But it's not uncommon to see a teacher complete one, but it's about one or two that might be really well endowed with their behavior knowledge that complete them.
I think we want the shift to be having more staff be able to complete the FBA and BIP, so it doesn't have a hierarchy of knowledge. Everyone has that common language and that common skill so that anyone can complete it with support, and that's why the behavior specialist can then be that coach or that support. But the idea is to expand that knowledge and have others complete FBAs and BIPs too.
Thank you. Yep.
And then the question came up a few times about sharing. If people wanted to get a real-time idea of the design and the content in the modules, is it necessary to be an internal Culpeper employee to access the training, or is it available for others to access as well?
So I think the intention for these training modules is for them to first be housed on the Culpeper Google Classrooms or the website for Culpeper staff to access, but the special ed director, Angie Neely, in Culpeper has also given her consent for these same modules when they are completed to be housed on our VCU ACE website as well, so that anyone within Virginia schools can certainly access that. So that's a little bit of time off before we'll get those up and running, but that is the goal of this initiative.
Okay, and then the last question, because I know you want to take a break before the next one, but do you test the hypothesis in the educational setting? And if so, how is that demonstrated? So when you had, you mentioned that some of the plans were not matched to the function of the behavior. So is the hypothesis statement tested? And maybe I'm not interpreting that correctly. Somebody wants to speak up, but that's the way the question read.
Lauren or Gino, do you guys want to speak on that based on Culpeper and what you guys have done in the past?
So I think best practice would be to have a well-rounded approach. So to observe, so to find those audits, observe, to see, talk with the staff, interview, and also look at the plans. So when we looked at the small sample group, we looked to see, hey, is what the description and what was talked about, does that match? Gino, would you think that's?
Yeah, that's how I would agree with it.
It is certainly open for improvement and, you know, changes and edits, but for the initial process, we tried to look and see the student, the teacher, and the description if it matched.
All right, thank you all very much. I want to make sure you get a break. Lauren and Gino and Noel put their contact information. If you have other questions, feel free to follow up with them. Also, I'd encourage you to review the chat box. Some other divisions entered that they also are using online modules and training. So the whole purpose of COLA is networking and making connections. So please review the chat box if you are looking for some of that before you exit the meeting. And with that, we just want to say thank you so much. What wonderful information, really, really, really helpful and applied information for everyone. So thank you so much. And the next session is at 11:30, so get your 5-minute break.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.